What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall markets. I'm going to talk about some very important levels to watch for and what my predictions are for tomorrow. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offer ends very soon, in just a couple of weeks. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the markets. So as far as SPY is going, this has dumped quite a bit over the last couple of days, ever since Jerome Powell opened his mouth. And the thing about that is, despite the fact that the market has sold off very hard, we held a key support so far, this 585 zone. This is previous resistance becoming support. And as long as we hold this, there is going to be potential for this to try to rebound, especially as we approach our key EMAs all over again. So I'll talk more about this in just a minute. I first want to talk about some data real quick. Just know that for the week, the data is going to be quite quiet this week. Tomorrow is going to be Monday, November 18th, 2024. We have a couple of Fed speakers in the morning. Then we have a couple of bill auctions at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And besides that, there's not really much data coming out. And then when it comes to Tuesday, there's not really much data. Wednesday, there's not much data. But then Thursday, we have more jobs numbers coming out, especially from the Philly Fed. Not to mention on Friday, we have lots of PMI data. So the data is going to be very quiet for the first couple of days of the week. Then it becomes a lot more intense on Thursday and Friday. So just keep that in mind. And then for earnings, we do have some big ones for the week. We start off on a very, very low end. We just have a couple of them, very, very minor ones. But then Tuesday is when we have like Walmart, Lowe's, a lot more retail, and things like that. So that's what's happening for Tuesday. And then Wednesday is going to be the most important day of the week for earnings because we have Target, Neo, TJ Maxx, and Wix in the morning. And then after market close, we have the big one. We have Nvidia announcing its earnings. This could be a make or break for the markets. If Nvidia does very poorly and Nvidia gets a sell off, the whole market's going to likely follow it. If Nvidia does really well and we see a big squeeze on the share price, this could carry the market higher or be used as an excuse to pump the markets, right? I think that's what the market's going to be using as a very, very big catalyst for Thursday and Friday. So get ready for a huge move. And that's what we're going to be looking out for the week. So the main volatility comes by Wednesday through Friday, and the first 2 days are going to be a little bit more quiet. Now, one more thing before I start talking about the charts, we're going to look at these indicators. Right now, the market's at neutral. So we were very greedy before. There was so much greed in the markets as SPY was hitting the all-time highs. It was at these high levels just a couple of days ago, right? We're not that far away from that period. There was so much greed that even though the market sold off quite a bit, we're still at neutral. We're not even in the fearful stage yet because the market was so strong beforehand. Also, momentum was super, super greedy before as SPY was at all-time highs, breaking them. And then what happened was we got this little sell off after that. We got that sell off, which caused us to become more neutral. That's why there's a little bit of a shift, but it's nothing too crazy. The puts and call option ratio is going up for the markets, at least on the 5 day average, which signifies there's more puts being bought. The shorts are coming back. People are starting to buy more shorts, expecting the market to dip lower. And we've been seeing that over the last couple of days as that's continuing to shift this ratio. Now, the VIX has dumped quite a bit, but there is an attempt by the VIX to try to bounce because we held our 14 to 15 area. We'll see if the VIX dips a little bit more before it may continue to go higher or not. But for now, it might dip just a little bit because the market does have potential to try to rebound if we hold this key support. So, what's my view of the markets? What's my prediction? Obviously, we got this big sell off, and it is looking a little bit more bearish in terms of its trend, but we don't usually just sell off in a straight line. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So, if you look at many other periods where we had corrective phases, right? For example, like right here, if we go back to like July, SPY sold off. We sold off about, that was like 20 points, like around almost 20 points. Then we ran up about 8 points. Then we sold off by about, that was like another 20 points. Then we ran back up about, this was like 15 plus points before we got another bigger sell off. We went from 554 all the way down to about the 514 area. That was a very aggressive sell off. I don't think our sell off right now is that aggressive, this level of aggressive. But then we got a little rebound after that. So what tends to happen is we get these sell offs, then we got bought back up a little bit, then we sell off more, then we get bought back up. The market does not just sell and sell and sell and sell unless we get a major catalyst. And in this case, I'm not seeing that major catalyst that's causing this sell off to be super, super, super aggressive. I'm not seeing that quite yet. So that makes me presume that As long as this support holds, as long as 585 holds on SPY, we should make an attempt to get back up towards that 588 to 589 target, very close to our 50 EMA. I think there's a very, very good chance that that's going to end up being what we see from now. So I think there's a very, very good chance that we see another attempt to rebound, especially as we approach the end of the day. But that does not mean the market's officially like super bullish. It could just be a lower high that's about to be made. So let's talk about the levels and I'll break down the charts. So if SPY loses 585, just hypothetically, we start dipping all the way down towards 583. And if that fails us, I think we start dumping all the way down to this gap area, this 580 zone to fill this gap. Those are going to be your three main supports: 585, 583, then 580. If we're bullish, you want to see SPY bounce here. If we hold above 586, I think we could easily go back up to about 588 to 589. There's not really much resistance there to stop this. So we could be pushing back up towards that resistance at the 50 EMA. If 588 to 589 breaks, we go back up towards 590, then 592. And if that breaks, we're going to continue to squeeze. I don't think we're going to go that high that fast. I think it's going to be a little bit slower. But here's my prediction. I predict what's going to happen is we're going to see a little rebound attempt. I think this might attempt to rebound. We're going to start off with some consolidation in the morning and slowly make our way back up towards that 589 area, 588 to 589. And we'll see if we get a rejection or not off of that. We're going to be watching that very closely. We still have that gap to fill above, which is a good sign for bulls. They may try to push us back up to about 592. But we're not going to focus on that yet. The first level is going to be 588 to 589. I think we're going to be trying to push back up towards that resistance before we see a big reaction. Another reason why I say that is because of ES. Notice ES has its 200 EMA at 58.67, and our resistance is going to be at 59.25. I think what's going to happen is either we did dip a little bit more towards like the 58.67 area, then we get a bounce, or we just bounce from here. We make our way back up to this imbalance towards 59.25, and if that breaks, we start pushing for about 59.50 again, and then we'll see if we get a rejection off our EMAs or not. But I do anticipate a little bit of a push that could be coming just temporarily before we see another reaction. Just keep that in mind. Now, for Nvidia, we have earnings this week, okay? So typically when you have earnings for stocks, there tends to be more volume, a lot more excitement. Premiums are going to become a lot more expensive. Just keep that in mind for Nvidia. And I think implied volatility is going to start going up. So I think there's going to be a little bit of excitement for earnings. And I wouldn't be surprised if we try to rebound a bit. As long as we don't lose 142, I think the odds are favoring that this is going to go back up to about 143.8 to 144. And if that breaks, we have 145.36. And if that breaks, we start pushing all the way up towards 148. So overall, Nvidia looks like it's going to try to push to at least 143.8 to 144 for a little bit of a rebound. We could even go higher than that. That's the most likely move as long as we don't hold below 142 for at least 4 hours. And looking at the setup, we have a wick forming. This could be a reversal structure, which could be pushing us back up towards that resistance. For Bitcoin, I think that it's just range bound essentially. So what's happening to Bitcoin is we tend to reject and get down close to like the 88,000 area, and then we get bought back up there. And when we hit like 92,000, we tend to see some downside. So I think we might be dipping close to 88,000, bounce back up to 92,000, just go back and forth for now. That's all I'm seeing for Bitcoin. There was some bullish news. I believe Kathy Wood had a prediction that by the end of the decade, it's going to reach 1.5 million or something like that. She could be correct, but we'll have to wait and see if sovereign funds do start loading up and whatever policy changes come over the next couple of years. But there is a lot of upside potential for Bitcoin, in my personal opinion. And I do believe it has the potential to hit hundreds of thousands per coin. Besides that, I also want to talk about Tesla. So the big one, Tesla, let's talk about this. We have this key support at 319 right now. If Tesla does not hold that, we're going to be dipping closer to about 315 and then 312. If we hold above 319, we easily go back up towards 328 and eventually 332. I believe the most likely possibility is we consolidate around 319, then eventually we start pushing back up towards 328 as the most likely possibility, so long as there's no bad news. We got a lot of bullish news on Friday with the new products Tesla announced, the new charging cabinets, not to mention the bullish news from Barron. That's very, very bullish with bullish targets. So I think that there's a good chance Tesla tries to push higher as the most likely possibility, as long as we don't lose 319 tomorrow. For NQ, this is attempting to rebound. And notice that we held around 20,400, and we're trying to retest our 200 EMA. We'll have to see if we can break that resistance or not. We have resistance at 20,525. If that breaks, we're going to be pushing back up towards 20,675 as well. For the QQQ, we've dipped quite a bit. We're going to see if we get a rebound as well. As long as we don't lose 496, I think the odds are favoring the 500 area, so we could be pushing back up for 500. We'll see if we get that bounce or not, so just give this some time to develop. For Apple, we're kind of trading sideways, going back and forth and back and forth. As long as we don't lose 224, we're going to try to rebound, try to break past 226.14. I think the odds favor 226 plus, and maybe even this gap fill for 227. But I think we're going back up for 226, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get with this. Now, as far as Neo goes, I want to call this one out, guys, because we have earnings this week. If you're interested in playing Neo, just know that we had this head and shoulders. We did call this out very nicely, right? I was talking about this head and shoulders for a while. It played out very well. Neo dumped quite a bit. But I think that to start off the week, within the next 1 to 2 days, there should be a little rebound coming, a small one perhaps, because we have earnings. And I think that the chart is showing some life here. So it may make its way back up towards the 4.64 area. For Netflix, notice that this was pumping, approaching the stage matchup between Tyson and Paul, and as a result of that, once we got to Friday, this thing just sold off. So we'll have to see. This is going to be trying to make a lower high here, so this could be a sign it's about to reverse. But what tends to happen is, as we hold our 200 or even 20 EMAs, so this is going to be at this 819 area, this is going to try to push a little bit. I think it's going to try to push just a bit to about that 830 area with the market, but then it might establish a lower high in the 830s. And then if it makes a lower high, it could reject and start dipping a little bit more after so much upside. So keep that in mind, guys. Netflix may slow down a bit. Look for a little bit more upside for the 830s, and we'll see if we make a lower high or not. If we break the highs, then it's going to remain bullish. If not, there could be a lower high. But look for a little bit more upside just to start things off, and we'll talk about the next moves after that. Right, we're just taking things one step at a time. For Celsius, we're a little bit more bearish. We need to reclaim 27.19 to turn back up. Otherwise, it's favoring downside, in my opinion, for the 25 target. If that fails us, we're looking for 23.8. I think the chart looks a little bit more bearish. Could be approaching that before it tries to bounce. Supermicro may attempt to bounce with Nvidia's earnings. As long as we don't lose 20.5, we're favoring a move back up to about 25.42. So I favor upside a little bit more now because we have a bullish divergence right over here, and volume is starting to increase just slightly. So I think we might be looking for a push, as long as we don't lose 20.5, a push back up to about 25.42. Palantir is a monster. This thing is continuing to squeeze. Okay, we got some interesting moves that are being made, especially with these new deals. And I think there's a very, very good chance this continues. So as long as we don't lose 65, I think the odds are favoring this is going to try to push for 68 flat, eventually 70 as our two potential targets. So I think there's a lot more upside potential for Palantir, so just keep that in mind. For Rivian has dipped quite a bit. We'll have to see if we get a bounce. As long as we don't lose this 9.6 area, I think this is favoring a push back up towards this 10.17 area. So I favor upside a little bit more for Rivian. And if that breaks, we're looking for 10.6. So look for a little bit more upside on Rivian. We'll give this the time it needs. For so far, we're trading sideways. We are bouncing off our 20 EMA. As long as 13.39 does not break, as long as we don't lose that, we could attempt to rebound. If we do lose that, we're looking for essentially 13 flat. If we hold this, we could attempt to push for 14 plus. So I think this is going to try to hold 13.39. I might try to push for 14 for a small push as we're holding our 20 EMA very nicely. This is very common in the market right now, by the way. IWM should get a bounce soon. So I'm thinking that as long as we don't lose like 26.75, we will get a bounce. Either between 26.75 and 28, it's going to be basing. So maybe it dips a little bit more, but then tries to bounce. But it should be trying to base at that area because first off, we have previous support, previous resistance becoming support. Excuse me, and it's also aligned with the gap support, so it's a confluence of supports. And then we have a gap to fill. After all this downside, it is due for a small bounce. So, like I said before, 26.75 to 28, it should be approaching that area, then trying to bounce. That's the most likely case, in my opinion. AMD's on a bit of a downtrend right now. It might try to rebound with Tesla as long as they don't lose 134. I think the odds favor 138. So look for an attempt to rebound. ARM is looking, it has been dipping quite a bit. We need to see if we could hold 127.5. If that fails us, we dip closer to 125. If this holds, I think we could easily start rebounding slowly to about the 132 area. So watch and see if 127.5 holds. I'm thinking it might try to hold. This is showing some signs of life. It might be trying to push for the 130s thanks to the chip stocks, trying to get some life with Nvidia's earnings. For coin, looks a little bit promising to me. As long as we don't lose 289, I think the chart is favoring essentially 213.5, then eventually 220, or 13, and then eventually 320. So I think we're favoring upside a little bit more on coin. Try to make our way back up to the 320 area, as long as we don't lose 300 and 289. For Amazon, we dipped quite a bit only to get rebounded. We're looking for 204.07 as our resistance and eventually back up towards 206. So I think this favors upside a little bit more for 204 and 206, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. But look for some more upside. For Meta, we dipped quite a bit. We have 550 as our main support. This is a little tricky because we do have some bad news that came out involving a very, very big holder that reduced their positioning on Meta. So I'm just trying to figure this out. It might dip closer to this 550 area. We have to see if that holds. If 550 fails, though, we do have a gap to fill back down to about the 540s. Just be careful with that. We may get a temporary bounce before it continues lower. So it's still kind of weak in terms of this trend after the reduction in these stakes. So I think that Meta is going to attempt to rebound first, and then there is still that risk of downside. We're going to be looking for an attempt to get back up to 560 with the markets, and I think that could be coming very soon as long as we don't lose 550. As long as Microsoft does not lose 414, I think the odds are favoring. This is going to try to push for 417.5. So look for a little bit more upside, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get as well. Google, it's the same setup. I mean, this might attempt to push for 175. If that breaks, look for 176.6. Those are going to be two resistance areas. It is looking like it's trying to turn on the 4 hour. As long as we don't lose essentially 172, this is favoring a push. If 172.5 fails us, this will be dumping a little bit lower. I think it's going to be pushing for 175 to 176.6, and we'll see what kind of reaction it gets after that. For more factors, we have DJT. DJT is very flat right now. We have this main support around this 26 area. We have resistance at 29 and then 31.5. So I think this is just going to trade sideways. It might try to push and try to break 29, but otherwise I just see it trading sideways, not really doing much. The VIX is trying to it started to push up right over here, which was because of the market dipping. We'll see if the VIX breaks its 50 EMA or not, because notice that the VIX is hitting this resistance. This makes me suspect it might actually dip closer to about 15.26, possibly because the market's about to see a small bounce. And might be the reason why. So I'll be watching to see if that ends up being the case. The 10-year is also trying to push. It's kind of flat right now after Jerome Powell's speech, not really affecting the market as much. The dollar, like now it's starting to look a little bit more normal because the dollar was pushing as the market has dipped. Is the dollar about to get a rejection here, start dipping back down to 106.4, eventually the lower 106s? If that's the case, that could signify that the market's about to see a little bit more upside. So we'll see how things end up going. Anyways, my view of the market is very simple. We'll be watching our levels for confirmation, but there is a good chance the market may try to rebound tomorrow as long as we don't lose our main supports. We're at some very strong support on SPY at 585 because of our key fib levels and also because it held support and that's previous resistance becoming support. So there's a good chance we try to rebound after so much downside, and then we'll see if we make a lower high or not in the markets. Watch and see how things end up going, guys. And I thank you all so much for listening. So please have a great rest of your day. Enjoy some football, enjoy life, and do what's best for your own health. And I just want to say I really appreciate you guys for your attention. So have a good day, night, or evening, wherever you guys are around the world. I'll be back tomorrow before market open to give you guys another update about what I see happening for the markets and give you guys more insights. Until then, I just wish the best for everyone. I'll see you guys very, very soon. Thank you all so much for listening, and peace out.